She thought it ended the day her stepmother was dragged away screaming. She thought the monster was gone. She was wrong. Because Miriam didn't lose everything. She lost restraint. And a woman with nothing left to lose doesn't disappear. She studies. She waits. While the world called it justice, Miriam called it humiliation. And humiliation doesn't want revenge. It wants blood. The girl who was beaten for feeding a crippled beggar believed kindness had saved her. But kindness doesn't end wars. It starts them. The billionaire she helped repaid her with protection. But protection creates shadows. And shadows create monsters. Part 1 was the slap. Part 2 is the hunt. Because when cruelty is cornered and power shifts hands, the question is no longer who wins, it's who survives. Silence was supposed to mean safety. That was what Amina believed the first night she slept behind a locked door that belonged to her alone. The room was small, clean, and unfamiliar. The sheets smelled of detergent instead of fear. The walls didn't echo footsteps pacing outside, yet her body didn't rest. Her eyes snapped open at the smallest sound, the hum of electricity, the distant horn of traffic, the soft click of the air vent. Each noise dragged her back to the house she had left behind, to the nights when silence meant Miriam was thinking, planning. Amina sat up slowly, pressing her palm to her ribs. The bruises were healing, but pain had memory. It reminded her where she came from. It reminded her not to trust calm too quickly. She swung her legs off the bed and stood barefoot on the cool floor. For a moment, she waited, holding her breath, listening. Nothing. No insults. No threats. No sudden rage breaking the quiet. She exhaled shakily and moved to the window. Outside, the city glowed in layers, streetlights below, office buildings beyond, distant movement she couldn't name. Life continued as if nothing had happened. As if Miriam had never screamed. That thought unsettled her more than fear ever had. Back in the house she once ruled, Miriam woke to darkness. The electricity had cut out sometime before dawn. She lay still on the mattress, staring into the ceiling she could barely see, listening to the unfamiliar quiet. No hum of appliances. No street noise filtering through open windows. The silence felt heavy, thick, pressing against her chest. She sat up abruptly, her heart pounding. The house felt wrong, too empty. She reached for her phone. No signal, no notifications, no reassurance that the world still bent when she demanded it. Her fingers trembled as she swung her legs to the floor, stepping onto tiles that felt colder than she remembered. "Hello?" she called out, her voice sharp, instinctively commanding. No answer. For years, silence had obeyed her. Now it mocked her. She moved through the house with growing unease, flipping switches that did nothing, checking rooms that echoed back her own breathing. The walls seemed closer, the air thicker. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Her mind replayed the meeting in fragments, glass walls, men in suits, the crippled beggar standing tall, the way his eyes had looked at her, not angry, not triumphant, certain. Miriam clenched her fists. Certainty was a luxury. She had taught Amina that. She had taught the world that. And now the world had taken it from her. Across the city, Amina dressed slowly for her first day back at work since everything changed. She chose clothes that fit properly, not hand-me-downs. The mirror reflected someone she barely recognized, still cautious, still bruised, but standing straighter than before. She hesitated before leaving the room, her hand hovering over the door handle. A memory surfaced, uninvited. Miriam's voice, low and amused. "You think anyone would believe you?" Amina swallowed and opened the door anyway. The street outside the building buzzed with routine indifference. People hurried past, eyes forward, absorbed in lives that didn't include her. She took a step onto the sidewalk and froze. Across the road, a woman stood watching the entrance. It wasn't Miriam. But the way the woman looked at her too long, too carefully sent a chill down Amina's spine. Their eyes met briefly before the woman turned away, blending into the crowd. Amina told herself it was nothing. She had learned to do that well. High above the city, Karim stood before a wall of screens. Footage played silently: streets, buildings, intersections. Not surveillance for control, observation for prevention. "Any movement?" he asked calmly. "Nothing direct," the man beside him replied. "But pressure is building." Karim nodded. Pressure always did. He had lived long enough to know that power never vanished, it only changed shape. "She will try," Karim said quietly. The man hesitated. "Do you want us to intervene sooner?" "No," Karim replied. "I want to see how far she goes." He turned away from the screens, his expression unreadable. Long ago, when he truly had been broken, no one had intervened. He had learned then what desperation taught people, and what it made them capable of. That afternoon, Amina felt it again, the sensation that had followed her since childhood. The feeling of being watched. It crept along her skin as she waited at the bus stop, standing where the bench used to be. She didn't sit. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A message from an unknown number. "Be careful who you trust." Her breath caught. She read it again and again. When she looked up, the street looked the same as always. Ordinary, unchanged. But something beneath it had shifted, like ground after an unseen crack. Far away, in a darkened house without power or witnesses, Miriam sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. Her phone lay useless beside her. She smiled slowly. Silence, she decided, was not safety. It was permission. Miriam learned quickly that desperation had rules. It stripped away pride first, then patience. What remained was instinct, sharp, focused, ugly. She spent the morning sitting at the kitchen table, watching sunlight creep through the windows and retreat again as clouds passed. The house felt smaller in daylight, every crack and stain suddenly visible. Evidence of neglect she had never noticed when she believed the walls belonged to her. She stood and moved to the cupboard. Empty. Not just low, empty. Her throat tightened. She slammed the door shut harder than necessary, the sound echoing back at her like accusation. For years, she had rationed, controlled, withheld. Hunger had been a weapon she wielded easily. Now it pressed against her from the inside. Miriam grabbed her bag and stepped outside. The street looked at her differently. She felt it immediately. Conversations dipped when she passed. Eyes lingered, then slid away. No one smiled. No one asked how she was. She stopped at the corner shop. The man behind the counter glanced up and frowned. "You owe," he said flatly. "I always pay," Miriam snapped. "Not today," the man replied, tapping the counter. "Accounts locked." The words struck deeper than a slap. Miriam stood frozen for a moment before anger rushed in to fill the space where fear had landed. "This is a mistake," she said. "Fix it." The man shrugged. "Not my problem." She left without buying anything, her heart pounding harder with every step. Outside, she leaned against the wall and forced herself to breathe. This was temporary. It had to be. She had survived worse. She had broken people with less. Across town, Amina sat at her desk, staring at her screen without seeing it. The message replayed in her mind, looping relentlessly. "Be careful who you trust." She hadn't replied. She didn't know how. The words felt too precise to be random, too intimate to ignore. Her fingers hovered over her phone again and again, but she left it untouched. At lunch, she ate slowly, waiting for the familiar knot of guilt to form in her stomach. It didn't. That unsettled her almost as much as fear. She had been conditioned to feel wrong when she wasn't suffering. When her shift ended, she walked home instead of taking the bus. She needed time, space. The city hummed around her, unaware that its patterns were beginning to shift. Behind tinted glass, Karim watched the same streets from a different angle. She didn't reply, the man beside him said. "Good," Karim replied. "Fear speaks louder when unanswered." He turned from the window. "Any sign of contact?" "Indirect," the man said. Miriam's reaching outward. Old connections. Quiet ones. Karim nodded. He expected nothing less. Cruelty rarely died alone. It remembered who had enabled it. That evening, Miriam stood outside a small bar on the edge of the district. It wasn't a place she liked, but it was a place she had once used. Inside, voices overlapped in low, careless tones. She pushed the door open and scanned the room. Her eyes found him instantly. Jonah sat alone, nursing a drink. His posture relaxed in the way of men who believed they were invisible. He looked up and smiled slowly. "Miriam," he said, "didn't think I'd see you again." "You always said that," she replied, sliding into the seat across from him. "Last time I did, you needed something," Jonah said. Miriam's lips curved faintly. "I still do." They talked quietly, carefully. No names, no direct questions, just threads reconnecting. Old favors remembered, old silences bought. Jonah listened, his expression unreadable. "You're asking for access," he said finally. "I'm asking for information," Miriam corrected. Jonah leaned back. "Same thing," she smiled. "You owe me." He studied her for a long moment. That was a long time ago. "So was loyalty," Miriam replied. Across the city, Amina reached the building and paused before entering. Something prickled at the back of her neck. She turned slowly, scanning the street. Nothing looked out of place. People passed, cars moved, life continued, yet the feeling remained. Upstairs, she locked the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. She slid down until she was sitting on the floor, breathing hard. The room felt too quiet again. Her phone buzzed. Another message. "You can't hide forever." Amina's hands shook. She typed a response before she could stop herself. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "Someone who knows what she's capable of." High above, Kareem closed his eyes briefly when the alert came through. "She reached out," the man said. "Yes," Kareem replied softly. "She always does." He straightened. "Increase observation, not intervention." "And the girl?" Kareem opened his eyes. "She needs to understand the shape of the danger. Only then can she choose how to stand." Back in the bar, Jonah finished his drink and stood. "I'll see what I can find," he said. "No promises." Miriam watched him go, satisfaction curling slowly in her chest. Hunger had sharpened her. Loss had focused her. This wasn't revenge yet. It was preparation. And somewhere between fear and resolve, the hunt began to take shape. Betrayal never announced itself. It arrived, politely, smiling, disguised as concern. Amina learned that on a Wednesday morning, when her supervisor asked her to step into the office and close the door a little too carefully behind them. "Sit," he said. The chair felt suddenly smaller than it had yesterday. Amina lowered herself into it, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She noticed how he avoided her eyes, how the air between them felt rehearsed. "There's been a complaint," he began. Her stomach dropped. "About my work?" He hesitated. That hesitation said more than words. "About your behavior," he said finally. Amina frowned. "My behavior?" He slid a printed email across the desk. Anonymous. No name, no signature, just accusations laid out in careful language. Claims that she was unstable, that she brought personal drama into the workplace, that she exaggerated abuse for attention. Her chest tightened. "I don't understand," she whispered. "That's the problem," he replied gently. "People are uncomfortable. People." The word was heavy, faceless, unchallengeable. "We're putting you on temporary leave," he continued, "until things settle." Amina's ears rang. Temporary. That was the word they used when they wanted silence without accountability. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. "I didn't do anything wrong." He sighed. "I know, but perception matters. Perception." She walked out of the office with her head high because she had learned that humiliation fed on posture. Only when she reached the street did her composure crack. Her phone buzzed. "See how easy it is to make people doubt you?" She stopped walking. Her fingers trembled as she typed. "This is you." The reply came seconds later. "I told you, you can't hide forever." Across town, Jonah sat in a parked car, his phone resting heavily in his palm. The message had been sent from a number he barely recognized anymore. A burner. Miriam's idea. He exhaled slowly. "This is getting messy," he muttered. Beside him, another man, one he hadn't expected to see again, watched the street through the windshield. "You're already in it," the man said calmly. Jonah turned. "I didn't agree to hurt the girl." "You agreed to provide access," the man replied. "Access hurts people." Jonah swallowed. He had told himself this was information. Just leverage. But leverage always landed somewhere. Meanwhile, Miriam stood in a borrowed apartment, staring at her reflection in a darkened window. She looked thinner, sharper. Her eyes burned with something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. She hadn't touched Amina. She hadn't needed to. Humiliation was cleaner, slower. It spread. Her phone buzzed. Jonah's name flashed briefly before disappearing. A message followed. "This ends after today." Miriam smiled. "You don't get to decide when it ends." Across the city, Karim sat very still as the reports came in. Employment suspension, anonymous complaints, digital harassment, traced through 3 layers of misdirection. "She's escalating," the man beside him said. "Yes," Karim replied. "And exposing her methods, she's hurting the girl." Karim's jaw tightened. Pain reveals patterns. Amina returned to the apartment in daylight, afraid of the dark. She locked the door, then checked it again. Her safe room felt suddenly fragile. She sat on the bed, her phone clutched in both hands. Another message appeared. "You see now? No one believes girls like you." Tears blurred her vision, not from weakness, but from anger she had never allowed herself to feel before. She typed slowly. "What do you want?" The reply took longer this time. "For you to remember your place." The words struck deeper than any slap. That night, Miriam stepped into the open air for the first time in days. She stood near the bus stop, the same one where Amina had fed the crippled beggar. The bench was empty. The street indifferent. She laughed softly. "Full circle," she murmured. A shadow moved nearby. Jonah approached, his face tense. "This is enough," he said. "You said information, not destruction." Miriam turned to him, her smile cold. "You should have thought of that before." He hesitated. "There are people watching now. Let them," Miriam replied. "I want them to." High above the city, Karim stood before the window, the lights reflecting in his eyes. "She's testing limits," the man said. "Yes," Karim replied. "And she's humiliating herself." "And the girl?" Karim was silent for a long moment. "She is learning something I learned too late," he said finally. "That silence does not protect you." Back in the apartment, Amina stood before the mirror. Her reflection looked tired, angry, awake. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "I'm not small." Outside, unseen, a car idled briefly, then moved on. The game had changed again, and betrayal had chosen its side. The first mistake Miriam made was assuming fear still lived where she left it. She stood across the street from the building Amina now lived in, hidden in plain sight among parked cars and passing strangers. The night air clung to her skin, heavy and damp, carrying the distant sound of traffic and voices she didn't care about. Her eyes never left the entrance. Control, she reminded herself, was about timing. She checked her phone. No new messages. Jonah had gone quiet after their last exchange. That annoyed her, but not enough to stop her. People always hesitated at the edge of consequence. That was when they were most useful. Across town, Amina sat on the edge of her bed, fully dressed despite the hour. Sleep had become impossible. Every sound felt loaded, every pause suspicious. Her phone lay face down beside her. She hadn't received another message since morning. That silence felt deliberate, like a held breath. She stood and moved toward the window, parting the curtain just enough to look down. A car sat idling across the street, dark, unmarked. Her pulse spiked. She stepped back slowly, her mind racing. Karim's words echoed faintly, "Silence does not protect you." She grabbed her phone and typed quickly, "She's here." The response came almost instantly. "We know." Amina's throat tightened. Down below, Miriam smiled as the building door opened. A young woman stepped out, similar height, similar build, hood up. Miriam's grip tightened on her bag. Wrong girl. Her smile faded. Something was off. She turned sharply, scanning the street. The idling car was gone. The rhythm of the night had shifted. Conversations nearby dipped unnaturally. Movement slowed in a way that felt staged. Miriam's instincts screamed. Too quiet, too controlled. She took a step back and collided with someone. Sorry, a man said calmly, steadying her elbow. His grip lingered just a second too long. Her eyes snapped to his. Recognition flared. Not the face, but the posture. The confidence. She pulled away. Watch it. He smiled faintly. You should take your own advice. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. Leave. Now. Miriam laughed softly, more out of reflex than confidence. Is this supposed to scare me? She muttered. Another message appeared. You're standing where cameras overlap. Her smile froze. High above, Karim watched the scene unfold through layered feeds. Not close enough to interfere. Close enough to see intent crystallize into action. She won't leave, the man beside him said. No, Karim replied. She needs to feel seen. Back upstairs, Amina pressed herself against the wall, listening. Footsteps echoed in the stairwell, slow, deliberate. Someone stopped outside her door. Her breath caught. A knock followed. Soft, controlled. Amina, a voice called. Familiar? Her blood ran cold. Miriam? Silence. Then laughter, quiet, poisonous. Open the door. Let's talk. Amina backed away, her heart hammering. Go away. I just want to see you, Miriam replied. After everything we've been through. Footsteps approached from the other end of the hall. Another voice, male. Calm. Step away from the door. Miriam turned sharply. Two men stood behind her now. Suits. No weapons visible. Their presence alone shifted the air. You can't tell me what to do, Miriam snapped. One of the men smiled thinly. We already are. Her phone buzzed again. This is your last warning. Miriam's chest rose and fell rapidly. Rage surged, hot and reckless. You think this scares me? She shouted, loud enough for doors down the hall to stir. You think I haven't survived worse? She raised her hand and pounded once on the door, hard. Amina. Inside, Amina slid down the wall, her hands over her ears, tears streaming silently. Then sirens. Distant at first, growing louder. Miriam froze. The men behind her stepped back simultaneously. That's your cue, one said. Panic cracked her composure. She turned and ran down the stairs, out into the street, vanishing into the dark just as flashing lights flooded the block. From the window above, Amina watched officers move through the street, calm but purposeful. The idling fear in her chest loosened slightly, but not fully. Karim closed his eyes briefly as the feeds cut. She ran, the man said. Yes, Karim replied, exactly as expected. He turned. Now she knows she's visible. And the girl? Karim was silent for a moment. She stood her ground, he said quietly. That changes everything. Down below, somewhere in the city, Miriam hid in an alley, her breath ragged, her hands shaking. For the first time, she wasn't hunting. She was being hunted, and she understood now too late that the trap she had set had teeth on both sides. Miriam did not sleep that night. She crouched on the cold floor of an abandoned storage unit, her back against a rusted door, her phone clutched in both hands like a lifeline. Every sound outside made her flinch. Every shadow felt intentional. For the first time in her life, fear was not something she inflicted. It was something that hunted her. Her phone buzzed. She nearly dropped it. One message, no number, no warning. You came closer than you should have. Her jaw clenched. She typed back furiously. You think you've won? You don't even know what you're protecting. The reply came slower this time. Neither did you. Across the city, Amina stood in Karim's office, staring at the wall of screens she hadn't known existed. Feeds replayed moments from the last few days, the bar, the street, the building hallway, the knock on her door, including one feed she had never seen before. Miriam, alone, talking, not to Jonah, not to anyone visible, to herself. The audio played softly. "I taught her fear," Miriam's voice said, stripped of its cruelty, naked with pride. "That's how you raise obedience. You break it in early." Amina's breath hitched. Kareem watched her carefully. "That recording is admissible." Amina swallowed. She was being watched the whole time? "Yes," Kareem replied. "But not by who you think." He nodded to another screen. Jonah appeared standing in a different room, older than she remembered, his posture heavier. He looked into the camera like a man who had already lost. "I didn't help her," Jonah said quietly. "I helped you." Amina's head snapped up. "She came to me because she thought I was loyal," Jonah continued. "Because she thought I was weak," he exhaled. "People like her mistake silence for compliance." Kareem folded his hands behind his back. "Jonah came to me years ago," he said, when he realized what Miriam was capable of. Amina's chest tightened. "The anonymous messages," Kareem continued. "The warnings, the delays, they weren't from Miriam." Amina whispered, "They were from him." Jonah nodded on screen. "I didn't think you'd survive her escalation," he admitted. "So I gave her enough rope." The screen shifted. Another clip played. Miriam, pacing, raging, laughing, confessing, not once, not twice, dozens of times captured across days, locations, devices. Amina's knees weakened. She sat slowly. "So the hunt was never about catching her," Kareem finished. "It was about letting her reveal herself completely." Silence filled the room. Amina closed her eyes. Memory surged Miriam's words, her tone, the certainty with which she had hurt without hesitation. "She thought I was hiding," Amina said softly. "Yes," Kareem replied. "She never imagined you were watching back." As if summoned by the truth, Amina's phone buzzed. One last message. "Come out. Let's finish this face to face." Kareem watched her carefully. "You don't have to respond." Amina looked up. Her eyes were steady now, awake in a way they had never been before. "I already did," she said. Kareem stilled. "When?" She showed him the screen. A sent message, time-stamped minutes earlier. "Bus stop. Midnight." Kareem studied her for a long moment, then nodded once, then let it end where it began. The bus stop was empty when Miriam arrived. The bench untouched, the street indifferent. "You always liked symmetry," Miriam muttered, stepping into the light. "I taught you that. When that's before 5 this way, you taught me fear," Amina replied from behind her. Miriam spun around. Amina stood there alone. No guards, no suits, no protection visible. Miriam laughed a cracked, desperate sound. "Look at you," she sneered. "Still pretending you're brave." Amina stepped closer. "You wanted me small," she said evenly. "So you never noticed how much I learned." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, not rushing, waiting. Miriam's smile faltered. "What did you do?" Amina held up her phone. The screen glowed with one word: live. "You talked," Amina said. "All those years. Tonight you talked again." Miriam's face drained of color. She lunged and stopped. The streetlights flickered on brighter. Cameras pivoted audibly. Doors opened along the block. People watched, not with fear, with recognition. Miriam staggered back, realization crashing over her. "You set me up?" Amina shook her head. "You set yourself up. I just stopped hiding." Police lights flooded the street. This time, they didn't stop at the curb. As hands closed around Miriam's arms, she screamed, not in rage, but in disbelief. "You were nothing without me." Amina met her eyes. "No," she said calmly. "I survived you." The car doors slammed shut. The street exhaled. Later, alone again at the bus stop, Amina sat where it had all begun. The night was quiet. Not threatening. Honest. Her phone buzzed once more. You were never small. She looked up as a black car passed slowly, then disappeared into traffic. Some empires were built in silence. Others collapsed when silence finally spoke. And the girl who had once been beaten for feeding a crippled man understood the final truth. The world doesn't change when monsters fall. It changes when survivors stop being afraid to be seen. End.